The deep space monitoring station at the edge of Valorian territory had been quiet for months. Nothing ever happened out here in the empty void between star systems. Sensor technician Veltara was half asleep at her console when every alarm in the facility suddenly screamed to life. Her insectoid eyes widened as impossible readings flooded her screen. Ships, dozens of them, massive ones, and they had just appeared out of nowhere at the very edge of their sensor range. "Admiral Thexmon," she shouted across the bustling command center, her voice cracking with panic. "We have incoming vessels at Grid 77 Alpha. Multiple contacts just dropped out of hyperspace." The old admiral's reptilian head snapped around so fast his neck scales rattled. In 4 decades of military service, he had learned that surprise visitors at the Empire's borders were never bringing good news. Pirates, raiders, or worse, they all announced themselves the same way. "How many ships are we talking about?" he demanded, his clawed feet clicking rapidly across the metal floor as he rushed to her station. Veltara's mandibles clicked nervously as she studied the data streaming across her monitors. 63 vessels, sir, all in perfect military formation. "But Admiral, these readings don't make sense. The ships are enormous, bigger than our largest dreadnoughts, but their energy signatures are completely unknown." This made the Admiral's blood run cold. The Valorian Empire had been the dominant power in this sector of the galaxy for over 2 centuries. Their military databases contained detailed information about every known spacefaring species within 1,000 light-years. Every engine type, every weapon system, every hull design had been catalogued and analyzed. Unknown technology meant unknown enemies. "What's their current position and heading?" Thexmon asked, his tail lashing back and forth. A sure sign. Of extreme agitation among his species. "They're holding position at the outer system boundary, sir. No movement since they arrived. Just sitting there." The Admiral studied the tactical display with growing unease. The mysterious fleet hung motionless in the black void of space, like a pack of sleeping predators. Their dark hulls absorbed the distant starlight, making them appear as shadowy threats against the starfield. Something about their perfect stillness was more terrifying than any aggressive approach would have been. "Try to establish communication," he ordered. "Standard first contact protocols, universal greetings, mathematical sequences, anything that might get a response." The communications officer worked frantically at his console for several minutes, before shaking his head in frustration. "Nothing, sir. Complete radio silence. They're not responding to any of our transmissions on any frequency." Thexmon's experienced military mind began racing through possibilities. Silent fleets usually meant one of 2 things. Either they were preparing for an attack or they were conducting reconnaissance. Neither option was comforting. "Sir," Veltara called out, her voice barely above a whisper, "I'm trying to get detailed scans of their ships, but something's wrong. Our most powerful sensors can barely penetrate their hulls. It's like they're made of some material we've never encountered before." The Admiral's worst fears were beginning to materialize. Advanced technology, unknown materials, perfect military formation, and complete communication silence. Every instinct developed over decades of military service was screaming warnings. "Send an immediate priority transmission to Imperial Command," he ordered, his voice taking on the sharp tone of absolute authority. "Tell them we have a potential first contact situation with unknown hostile forces. Request immediate backup from the 3rd Fleet." "Yes, sir," the communications officer replied, his fingers flying over his controls. "Priority transmission sent. Estimated arrival time for reinforcements is 18 hours. Also put our entire defensive grid on maximum alert," Thexmon continued. "I want every weapon system powered up and ready. If these strangers decide to make a move, we need to be prepared." As urgent messages raced through hyperspace toward the Empire's capital world, the mysterious human fleet continued their silent vigil at the system's edge. Inside their ships, human commanders studied detailed intelligence reports about Valorian military capabilities, political structures, and cultural practices. They had been observing this region of space for months, learning everything they could about the local powers before making contact. The humans had not come to conquer through force. They had come to establish their presence through demonstration of overwhelming superiority. But first, they needed to understand exactly who they were dealing with. The Valorian Empire's response to their arrival would tell them everything they needed to know about how to proceed. In the depths of space, two vastly different civilizations faced each other across the void, each trying to understand the intentions of the other. The Valorians saw a potential threat that defied all their experience and knowledge. The humans saw another entry in their growing catalogue of galactic civilizations, one that would soon learn its place in the new order they were quietly establishing across the galaxy. The waiting game had begun. Captain Mordain had seen a lot in her 30 years of diplomatic service. She had made first contact with angry warrior species, peaceful traders, and everything in between. But nothing had prepared her for this moment as her ship, the Harmonious Convergence, slowly approached the mysterious fleet, hanging silently at the edge of Valorian space. Her diplomatic vessel was specifically designed for first contact situations. It carried no heavy weapons, displayed bright colors and peaceful symbols, and broadcast friendship signals on every known frequency. The approach was textbook perfect, slow, predictable, and completely non-threatening. Communications Officer. Yelkan, begin standard first contact procedures, she ordered from her command chair. The young officer's synthesized voice crackled through his translation device as he worked. Broadcasting mathematical sequences now, Captain, starting with universal constants, the speed of light, basic physics equations, prime number sequences. Mathematics was supposed to be the universal language. Every intelligent species that could build starships had to understand basic physics and numbers. It was always the first step in establishing communication with unknown aliens. But the dark ships ahead remained completely silent. No response, Captain, Yelkan reported after. 20 minutes of continuous broadcasting. Their vessels show no reaction to our signals at all. Captain Mordain studied the alien fleet through her view screen. The ships were unlike anything in the Imperial databases. They had smooth, dark hulls that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Most disturbing was what she couldn't see. No obvious weapon ports, no visible sensor arrays, no communication dishes or antennas. Yet somehow these vessels had traveled between the stars. Try the cultural exchange protocols, she decided. Music, art samples, basic pictographs showing our species and our peaceful intentions. Her crew began broadcasting everything from classical, Valorian symphonies to simple drawings, showing their reptilian species offering gifts to stick figures representing the unknown aliens. They transmitted mathematical art, stellar cartography, and even recipes for traditional foods. Hours crawled by with no response. Captain, her tactical officer reported nervously, their fleet hasn't moved at all. They're just sitting there watching us. It's unsettling. Mordain agreed. Most species showed some kind of reaction during first contact: curiosity, aggression, fear, or at least acknowledgement. This complete silence was more disturbing than outright hostility would have been. Then everything changed in an instant. Without any warning or visible acceleration, one of the smaller escort vessels separated from the alien formation and approached her ship. The movement was impossibly smooth and fast. Their sensors barely registered the ship's motion before it was already alongside them. "Incoming transmission!" Yelkan shouted, his voice filled with surprise and excitement. The main view screen flickered to life, and Captain Mordain found herself staring at something she had never seen before. The alien was clearly bipedal like her own species, but completely different in every other way. It had pale, smooth skin instead of scales, and strange hair-like fibers growing from its head. Most striking were its eyes, small, dark, and incredibly alert. The creature wore a simple, dark uniform with very few decorations or rank insignia. Everything about its appearance suggested efficiency and practicality over ceremony. "Greetings," the alien said, and Mordain nearly fell out of her command chair. The creature was speaking perfect Valorian Imperial Standard, not just the common trade language, but the formal diplomatic dialect used only in official government. Communications. The accent was flawless, the grammar precise. "I am Commander Lee Minho of the Terran Collective," the human continued with a slight smile. "We apologize for the delay in responding to your communication attempts. We were observing your approach protocols and found them quite thorough and professional. We would like to request a formal audience with Imperial leadership to discuss our presence in this region. The casual tone and confident manner sent chills down Mordane's spine. This Commander Lee Min-ho showed no deference to Imperial authority, no nervousness about making first contact, and no concern about being vastly outnumbered by Valorian forces in this system. Commander Lee Min-ho, Mordane replied carefully, trying to maintain diplomatic composure despite her racing thoughts. I am Captain Mordane of the Valorian Empire. On behalf of His Imperial Majesty, I welcome you to our space. May I ask how you came to learn our language so perfectly? The human's smile grew slightly wider, but her eyes remained unreadable. We make it our business to understand our neighbors before introducing ourselves, Captain. Knowledge prevents misunderstandings, and misunderstandings can lead to unnecessary conflicts. The implication hit Mordane like a physical blow. These aliens, these humans, had been studying the Valorian Empire for some time before making contact. They had learned not just the language, but the proper diplomatic protocols and formal procedures. Shall we arrange that meeting with your leadership? Commander Lee Min-ho asked pleasantly, as if requesting permission to dock at a commercial station rather than demanding an audience with the most powerful beings in the Empire. Captain Mordane realized that everything she thought she knew about first contact had just been turned upside down. The humans weren't confused aliens stumbling into Valorian space. They were here deliberately, with specific goals and thorough preparation. The question was, what did they really want? The human shuttle that approached Admiral Thexmon's massive flagship looked like a child's toy in comparison. Where Valorian vessels were decorated with intricate designs, ceremonial colors, and symbols of imperial power, this craft was plain, angular, and purely functional. It resembled a simple metal box with engines attached. Primitive design, muttered Commander Vextal as he watched the shuttle maneuver toward their docking bay. I've seen cargo haulers with more sophisticated hulls, but Admiral Thexmon wasn't so quick to judge. In his decades of military experience, he had learned that appearances could be deceiving. The fact that these humans had crossed interstellar space in ships that looked basic suggested they possessed technology that wasn't immediately obvious. When the shuttle docked and its passengers emerged, the Admiral's confusion only deepened. Protocol demanded that first contact delegations include dozens of officials, diplomats, military advisors, cultural specialists, security personnel, and ceremonial guards. The Valorian Empire's own first contact procedures required no fewer than 47 different specialists for initial meetings with unknown species. Only 3 humans stepped off their shuttle. The first was Commander Lee Min-ho, whom they had already met via communication. She moved with quiet confidence, her simple uniform bearing minimal insignia. Behind her came a tall woman with intelligent eyes and an air of scientific curiosity. The third was a man who seemed to observe everything while saying nothing. Welcome. Aboard the Imperial Dominion, Admiral Thexmon announced formally, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of Imperial tradition. I am Admiral Thexmon, Commander of the Third Fleet and representative of His Imperial Majesty. Your delegation is smaller than we anticipated. Commander Lee Min-ho smiled politely. We appreciate the formal welcome, Admiral. Allow me to introduce Dr. Park So-young, our science specialist, and Kim Jae-wook, our information analyst. We find that smaller groups make decisions more efficiently than large committees. The Admiral's tail twitched with uncertainty. But surely you require advisors, security personnel, cultural specialists? Each of us fulfills multiple roles, Dr. Park explained with a friendly tone. We've found that too many voices can complicate simple conversations. As the group moved to the main conference room, Admiral Thexmon couldn't shake his unease. Every other species the Empire had encountered understood the importance of diplomatic ceremony. Large delegations showed respect, demonstrated the importance of the meeting, and provided expertise for complex negotiations. These humans seemed to be treating this historic first contact like a casual business meeting. The conference room was designed to impress. Massive viewports showed the stars beyond, while holographic displays presented the might and glory of the Valorian Empire. Maps showed their territory, statistics demonstrated their economic power, and military readouts displayed their defensive capabilities. The humans seemed mildly interested, but not intimidated. "Your empire has achieved remarkable stability in this region," Dr. Park commented casually as she studied a trade route display. "Though I noticed some tension with the Zelani consortium over mining rights in the Outer Rim territories. That must be creating supply chain complications." Admiral Thexman's secondary arms flexed involuntarily, a stress response his species couldn't easily control. The trade dispute with the Zelani was barely 3 months old and had been kept completely confidential. How could these aliens know about it? "Your information sources are impressive," he said carefully. Before Commander Lee could respond, the quiet man, Kim Jae-wook, spoke for the first time since boarding their ship. "General Morkan's strategy in the Keth border conflicts shows interesting tactical innovation," he observed quietly. "His use of mobile defense platforms has significantly reduced casualty rates compared to previous engagements." The Admiral's blood ran cold. General Morkan's tactics were classified military intelligence. The border skirmishes with the Keth Confederacy were barely reported in public news channels, and the specific tactical details were known only to high-ranking military officials. "How do you know about our military operations?" Admiral Thexman demanded, his diplomatic composure beginning to crack. Commander Lee Min-ho's expression remained pleasant and unthreatening. "Information flows freely in a connected galaxy, Admiral. We make it our business to understand regional developments before making formal contact. Your empire's military efficiency is quite impressive, though we have noted some concerning pressure points that might benefit from outside perspective." The casual way she discussed classified imperial affairs was terrifying. These humans weren't stumbling blindly into Valorian space. They had been watching, learning, and analyzing everything about the Empire for an unknown period of time. "What exactly brings the Terran Collective to our borders?" the Admiral asked, fighting to keep his voice steady. "Neighborhood introductions," Commander Lee replied with the same enigmatic smile. "We believe it's time to establish formal diplomatic relations with the regional powers. The galaxy is becoming a smaller place, and we prefer to meet our neighbors before circumstances force the introduction." Dr. Park added helpfully, "We're particularly interested in promoting stability and peaceful development in this sector. Unnecessary conflicts waste resources that could be better used for mutual advancement." Admiral Thexamon realized with growing dread that these 3 humans possessed intelligence capabilities that far exceeded anything the Empire had encountered. They knew things they shouldn't know, spoke with confidence that suggested vast hidden resources, and discussed galactic affairs as if they were already a major power, rather than newcomers. The most disturbing part was their complete lack of concern about being vastly outnumbered by Imperial forces. Either they were incredibly naive, or they possessed capabilities that made Valorian military superiority irrelevant. The Admiral was beginning to suspect it was the latter. Dr. Park So-young's request caught everyone completely off guard. In the Admiral's long experience with alien species, technological secrets were the most closely guarded possessions of any civilization. Wars had been fought over access to advanced propulsion systems or weapon designs. Yet here was this human scientist asking for a casual tour of their most sensitive equipment. "You want to see our power core?" Chief Engineer Voxtal asked, his reptilian crest rising in disbelief. "These are classified military systems." "Oh, I understand if that's not possible," Dr. Park replied with genuine disappointment. "I'm just fascinated by different approaches to antimatter containment. We've been working on similar problems, and I'm always eager to learn from other solutions." Admiral Thexmon found himself in an impossible position. Refusing would seem hostile during first contact negotiations, but allowing an unknown alien to examine their most advanced technology violated every security protocol in the Imperial Manual. "Perhaps a limited tour of our secondary systems would be acceptable," he decided carefully. Dr. Park's face lit up with excitement. "That would be wonderful. Thank you so much." As they walked through the engineering sections, the human scientist asked questions that made Voxtal increasingly uncomfortable. Her inquiries showed a deep understanding of advanced physics that seemed impossible for a species with such simple-looking ships. "Your antimatter containment is really impressive," she commented, while studying the massive power core through reinforced viewing ports. "The ferromagnetic bottle compression approach is quite elegant. Though I'm curious, have you experimented with plasma field layering? Theoretically, it should improve containment efficiency by about 30% while reducing power requirements, Chief." Engineer Voxtel's crest flared bright red with indignation. "Impossible! Our containment systems represent 2 centuries of Imperial engineering advancement. They are the most sophisticated antimatter systems in known space." Dr. Park smiled apologetically. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to suggest your systems were inadequate. They're clearly very well designed. I was just thinking out loud about theoretical possibilities." But the damage was done. Voxtal was furious that this alien was casually suggesting improvements to technology that represented the pinnacle of Valorian science. As they continued the tour, Dr. Park made more observations that left the engineering staff stunned. She discussed gravitational wave generators with casual expertise, suggested modifications to their hyperspace navigation systems, and asked technical questions about quantum field manipulation that revealed knowledge far beyond what should be possible for a newly contacted species. "Your harmonic resonance patterns in the gravity well generators are quite clever," she mentioned while examining another system. "The frequency modulation prevents dimensional shearing. Very elegant solution, though the power coupling efficiency could probably be improved with cascade amplification. Have you tried running parallel field generators in phase opposition?" The Imperial engineers exchanged worried glances. The human was describing modifications that their own research teams had been struggling with for decades. Later that evening, Admiral Thexmon pulled Commander Lee Min-ho aside for a private conversation. "Your scientist possesses remarkable theoretical knowledge," he said carefully, "especially for a species whose ships appear to use such straightforward designs." Commander Lee's expression became thoughtful. "Dr. Park does tend to get very excited about physics and engineering problems. She's always been curious about how different civilizations solve technical challenges. But the contradiction bothers me," the Admiral continued. "She speaks about advanced concepts that suggest sophisticated understanding, yet your vessels appear almost primitive compared to Imperial designs." Lee smiled mysteriously. "Appearances can be deceiving, Admiral. We've learned that sometimes the most effective solutions look simple from the outside. Obvious complexity often masks underlying inefficiency. Our engineers prefer function over form." That night, while the humans slept in their assigned quarters, Imperial intelligence teams worked frantically to scan their vessels with every sensor array available. What they discovered only deepened the mystery. Their most sophisticated scanning equipment met strange interference patterns that defied analysis. The readings they managed to obtain were baffling and contradictory. Energy signatures that seemed to violate fundamental physical laws. Power sources that generated impossibly high output from unknown principles. Structural materials that their sensors couldn't identify or classify. "It's like their ships exist in a different physics framework," reported Chief Science Officer Yalmex to the Admiral. "Our instruments can detect the ships are there, but we can't understand how they work. The energy readings suggest technology centuries beyond our current capabilities." Admiral Thexmon stared out at the human fleet, hanging silently in space. The contradiction was becoming impossible to ignore. These humans possessed knowledge that surpassed Imperial science, yet presented themselves as simple neighbors making friendly contact. "Keep scanning," he ordered. "There has to be an explanation." But deep down he was beginning to suspect that the explanation would be far more disturbing than he wanted to admit. The humans weren't hiding their advanced technology because they were secretive. They were hiding it because revealing the truth would fundamentally change the balance of power in the entire galactic region. The question was, what were they really planning to do with that power? Admiral Thexmon had reached his breaking point. 3 days of polite conversations and mysterious hints had gotten him nowhere. The humans answered every question with vague responses that revealed nothing about their true capabilities. It was time for a different approach. "Prepare the 3rd battle group for combat exercises," he ordered his tactical officer. Full military. Demonstration. I want our 3 largest dreadnoughts running attack patterns at maximum combat readiness. The plan was simple but effective. By conducting military exercises near the human fleet, he would accomplish 2 goals. First, he would demonstrate the overwhelming power of Imperial military forces, a not-so-subtle reminder of who controlled this region of space. Second, he would observe how the humans reacted to displays of force. Their response would tell him everything he needed to know about their intentions and capabilities. "Sir, the battle group is in position," reported Tactical Officer Velshan. "All ships ready for exercise commencement." "Begin the demonstration," Thexmon commanded. The 3 Imperial dreadnoughts were magnificent vessels, each one over 2 kilometers long and bristling with enough firepower to destroy entire planets. They began their coordinated dance of destruction with precision that had taken decades to perfect. The massive warships accelerated into attack formations, their hulls gleaming in the starlight. Energy weapons charged to full power, creating brilliant displays of contained lightning that painted the void in colors of death. The ships moved in perfect coordination, each captain anticipating the other's actions with practiced ease. It was a deadly ballet of overwhelming force, the kind of display that had convinced dozens of other species to accept Imperial protection rather than face Imperial wrath. The human fleet watched in complete silence. "No reaction from the alien vessels," reported Sensor Chief Yalhan. "They're maintaining their original formation. No defensive posturing, no weapons charging, no movement at all." Admiral Thexmon frowned. Most species showed some kind of response to displays of military power, either fear, aggression, or at least defensive preparations. The humans' complete lack of reaction was unsettling. "Increase the intensity," he ordered. "Full combat simulation. I want them to understand what they're dealing with." The dreadnoughts responded immediately. Their weapon systems lit up the darkness with massive energy discharges. Simulated torpedo spreads filled space with brilliant explosions. The ships executed high-speed attack runs, emergency maneuvers, and coordinated assault patterns that demonstrated centuries of military evolution. Still, the human ships remained motionless observers. Then everything changed in a heartbeat. Without any warning, without any visible acceleration or energy signature, one of the smaller human escort vessels simply appeared directly in the center of the 3 Imperial dreadnoughts. "What?" Sensor Chief Yalhan whispered in shock. "How did it get there?" The impossible had just happened. The human ship had somehow moved from its position in their distant formation to a point directly between the 3 most powerful warships in the Imperial fleet. Their sensors showed no movement, no acceleration curve, no energy expenditure. The ship had simply been in one place, and then it was in another. "It moved faster than our targeting systems could track," Yalhan reported. His voice filled with disbelief. "Our computers show no transition period, it was just suddenly there." But the demonstration was far from over. The human vessel began moving in ways that violated every law of physics the Valorians understood. It changed direction without slowing down, as if momentum and inertia were merely suggestions rather than fundamental forces of nature. The ship rotated and spun without any visible reaction systems, performed impossible turns without structural stress, and accelerated to velocities that should have torn it apart. Most disturbing of all, it stopped, instantly from maximum velocity, with no deceleration period. The ship simply went from impossible speed to complete stillness in 0 time. "This is impossible," Tactical Officer Velshan whispered. "Nothing can move like that. It's violating basic physics." For 30 seconds, the human ship danced between the 3 dreadnoughts, performing maneuvers that made the most advanced Imperial fighters look clumsy and primitive. It treated the massive warships like stationary obstacles in an elaborate demonstration of technological superiority. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the human vessel vanished from the center of their formation and reappeared in its original position within the human fleet. Admiral Thexmon stared at the tactical display in stunned silence. Everything he thought he knew about space combat, military technology, and the balance of power in the galaxy had just been shattered in 30 seconds. His communication board chimed softly. Commander Lee Min-ho's face appeared on the screen, her expression pleasant and appreciative. "That was an impressive exercise, Admiral," she said with what appeared to be genuine admiration. "Your ships move with excellent coordination. The precision of your attack patterns is remarkable. We enjoyed watching the demonstration." "How?" was all Admiral Thexmon could manage to say. Commander Lee's smile held just a hint of mystery, like a teacher who had just shown a student something wonderful, but couldn't explain all the details yet. "Practice, Admiral," she replied simply. Lots and lots of practice. The communication ended, leaving the Admiral staring at the human fleet with a completely new understanding of the situation. The humans hadn't been observing the Imperial military exercise to learn about Valorian capabilities. They had been politely watching a show put on for their entertainment. Imperial cryptographer Zilnash had always been considered the best code breaker in the Valorian fleet. Her 8-armed body was perfectly designed for working multiple decryption algorithms simultaneously, and her compound eyes could process data streams that would overwhelm most other species. But the human communications had pushed her to her absolute limits. For 3 straight days, she had barely left her workstation. Empty food containers and stimulant injectors littered her desk as she worked frantically to crack even the smallest fragments of human transmissions. Their communication encryption was unlike anything she had ever encountered, not just advanced, but based on completely different mathematical principles. Most frustrating of all, the humans weren't even trying to hide their communications. They broadcast on standard frequencies using normal transmission protocols. But the content itself was locked behind layers of encryption that seemed almost casual in their sophistication. Finally, after 72 hours of continuous work, small pieces began falling into place. "Admiral Thexman," she called across the intelligence center, her voice cracking from exhaustion but filled with excitement. "I've managed to decode fragments of their internal communications. You need to see this immediately." The Admiral rushed to her workstation, his tail lashing with anticipation. Any intelligence about human capabilities could be crucial for the Empire's survival. "What have you found?" he demanded. Zilnash's primary hands worked frantically across her displays, while her secondary arms organized printouts of decoded text. "They keep referring to something called the Terra Collective, which appears to be their government or ruling organization. But, sir, that's not the disturbing part." She pulled up a translated communication fragment on her main screen. "They mention multiple expedition fleets. This group that's been talking to us, they call themselves Pacific Fleet in their transmissions." Admiral Thexmon's blood turned to ice. "Multiple fleets?" "Yes, sir. I found references to Atlantic Fleet, Indian Fleet, Mediterranean Fleet, and Arctic Fleet. Based on the context of their communications, each of these appears to be a separate force of similar size and composition to the one we are currently facing." The implications hit the Admiral like a physical blow. If this human fleet was just one of several identical forces, then the Terran Collective possessed military resources that dwarfed anything the Valorian Empire could field. "How many ships are we talking about total?" he asked, dreading the answer. "I can't determine exact numbers, but if each fleet is comparable to Pacific Fleet, we're looking at potentially hundreds of vessels across all their forces combined. And, sir, there's something else." Zilnash pulled up another series of decoded fragments. They maintain detailed intelligence files on dozens of galactic civilizations, species names I don't recognize, located in regions far beyond our territory. The scope of their information gathering is unprecedented. Admiral Thexmon studied the partial translations with growing horror. The humans had files on civilizations the Empire had never even heard of, located thousands of light-years away, in completely different galactic sectors. "They're not just operating in our region," he realized. "This is a galaxy-wide intelligence operation." "That's my assessment as well, sir. The humans appear to be conducting systematic observation and cataloging of every major civilization in the galaxy. The scale is unlike anything we've ever encountered." The Admiral's mind raced through the implications. The humans weren't stumbling into Valorian space by accident. They weren't even focused specifically on the Empire. This was part of a massive coordinated effort to map and understand every significant power in the entire galaxy. "Have you been able to determine their ultimate objectives?" he asked. "The communications are still mostly encrypted, sir, but the fragments suggest this is preliminary contact prior to some kind of larger initiative. They're gathering information before making major decisions about each civilization they encounter." That afternoon, Admiral Thexmon confronted the human delegation with these discoveries. Commander Lee Minho and Dr. Park So-young listened politely as he presented the decoded intelligence, but it was Kim Jae-wook who finally responded. The quiet human had barely spoken since arriving aboard the Imperial flagship. His role in the delegation had been unclear, and he seemed content to observe while his companions handled most conversations. Now he spoke for the first time in days, his voice soft, but carrying absolute certainty. "Understanding precedes introduction," he said simply. "We prefer to know our neighbors before making formal contact. It prevents misunderstandings that could lead to unnecessary conflicts." His tone was mild and reasonable, but Admiral Thexmon sensed vast depths of knowledge and planning behind the quiet statement. This wasn't casual exploration or scientific curiosity. "You've been cataloging the entire galaxy," the Admiral accused. Kim Jae-wook nodded calmly. "Knowledge brings stability. Ignorance breeds conflict. We've found that thorough preparation prevents problems that might otherwise require more direct solutions." The casual way he discussed galaxy-wide intelligence operations sent chills down the Admiral's spine. The humans weren't exploring unknown space or making accidental contact with alien civilizations. They were systematically mapping every significant power in the galaxy, gathering detailed intelligence on their capabilities, weaknesses, and potential threats. The Valorian Empire wasn't a new discovery. They were simply the next entry in an extensive database that apparently covered the entire known galaxy. The most terrifying part was the implication behind Kim Jae-wook's words. The humans were gathering all this information for a reason. They were preparing for something much larger than simple diplomatic contact, and the Valorian Empire was just one small piece in whatever massive plan they were developing. Emperor Valorius had ruled the greatest empire in this sector of the galaxy for over 30 years. He had faced down rebellions, conquered neighboring systems, and built a military force that no other civilization dared challenge. But standing in his throne room, listening to reports from Admiral Thexmon, he felt true fear for the first time. "In decades. You're telling me they want proof of their authority?" the Emperor asked, his scaled hands gripping the armrests of his throne. "These 3 humans, aboard a simple shuttle, are demanding that the Valorian Empire justify our existence to them." "That's essentially correct, Your Majesty," Admiral Thexmon replied grimly. "Commander Lee Minho has requested permission to demonstrate human capabilities. She says it will help clarify the new arrangement they're proposing." The Emperor's rage was magnificent. His voice echoed through the vast throne chamber as he roared his response. "Grant it. Let these arrogant aliens show us what they think passes for power. Then we'll show them what happens to those who threaten the Empire." What happened next would be remembered as the moment everything changed. Across Valorian space, the void itself began revealing secrets that had been hidden for weeks. The 63 human ships that Imperial sensors had been tracking suddenly multiplied. What appeared to be empty space around them shimmered, and dozens more vessels appeared, their cloaking systems deactivating in perfect coordination. "Impossible," Admiral Thexmon whispered, as his tactical displays exploded with new contacts. "How many ships are out there?" The answer came from every monitoring station throughout the Empire. Hundreds of human vessels were decloaking simultaneously across dozens of star systems, sleek predatory ships that had been hiding in plain sight, while Imperial forces conducted their normal patrols. "Sir," reported Communications Officer Yelkan, his voice trembling, "we're receiving similar reports from every sector of Imperial space. Human fleets are appearing everywhere. They've been surrounding us for weeks without our knowledge." Dr. Park So-young, who had been quietly observing the Imperial reaction, spoke with genuine admiration in her voice. "Your sensor systems are actually quite impressive, Admiral. We were genuinely challenged by their sophistication. Circumventing them required considerable engineering effort on our part." The casual compliment made the situation even more terrifying. The humans were praising Imperial technology, while simultaneously revealing that they had completely neutralized it. But the demonstration wasn't finished. At the border world Vexthan, where the Keith Confederacy had launched their surprise assault, something unprecedented was taking place. The Keith attack fleet, 47 warships carrying enough firepower to devastate an entire planet, encountered human vessels waiting in perfect ambush positions. The battle lasted exactly 9 minutes and 37 seconds. The Keith warships didn't explode in spectacular displays of destruction. They didn't engage in desperate last stands or heroic sacrificial charges. They simply stopped working. One by one, every Keth vessel lost all power. Their weapons went offline, their engines shut down, their life support systems switched to emergency backup power. The mighty assault fleet that had been preparing to devastate Imperial territory drifted helplessly in space like abandoned cargo containers. Then human transport ships appeared, offering medical assistance and technical support to the disabled Keth crews. "Remarkable," Emperor Valorius said quietly as he watched the tactical reports flooding in. "They defeated an entire assault fleet without firing a shot." Commander Li Minho nodded calmly. "Violence is inefficient, Your Majesty. Disabling enemy vessels preserves both lives and valuable resources. The Keth crews are receiving medical attention and will be returned to their territory once the situation is resolved." "How did you know about their attack?" the Emperor demanded. "Our own. Intelligence services only detected their fleet movements 6 hours ago." "We've been monitoring Keth military communications for several months," Li replied matter-of-factly. "Their operational planning was quite thorough, but they didn't take adequate security precautions. We positioned our forces accordingly when their attack became inevitable. The full scope of human capabilities was finally becoming clear. They possessed cloaking technology that could hide entire fleets from Imperial sensors. Their intelligence gathering surpassed anything the Empire had achieved. Their weapons could disable enemy ships without causing casualties, and they had been operating throughout Valorian space for weeks without detection. You've been in complete control of this situation from the beginning," Admiral Thexmon stated, his voice hollow with the realization. Dr. Park So-young smiled gently. "We prefer to understand all variables before making important decisions. Preparation prevents problems that might otherwise require more dramatic solutions." Emperor Valorius looked around his throne room, at the displays showing human fleets throughout his territory, at the reports of effortlessly neutralized enemies, at the 3 humans who had just demonstrated that his mighty empire was completely at their mercy. For the first time in his reign, he was forced to accept that the Valorian Empire was no longer the dominant power in this region of space. The humans had been in charge all along. They had simply been polite enough to let the Empire think otherwise, until it was time to reveal the truth. The age of Valorian dominance was over, and the humans had ended it without firing a single shot in anger. The emergency summit meeting had been called within hours of the Keth Confederacy's humiliating defeat. For the first time in over 2 centuries, representatives from both the Valorian Empire and their longtime enemies sat in the same room, united only by their shared shock at what they had witnessed. The conference chamber aboard the neutral space station felt tense and surreal. Emperor Valorius sat at one end of the massive table, his golden robes and ceremonial armor reflecting the power he had wielded for decades. At the other end, Kith Supreme Commander Yexdar wore the battle scars of a warrior species that had never known defeat until today. Between them, 3 humans sat calmly, as if they were attending a routine business meeting. Commander Li Minho stood and addressed both delegations with the same respectful confidence she had shown throughout their first contact. Her simple uniform and quiet manner made a stark contrast to the elaborate ceremonial dress worn by both Imperial and Keth leaders. The Terran Collective is prepared to offer comprehensive regional stabilization services to all civilizations. In this sector, she announced, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. This includes protection from external threats, technological advancement programs, and mediation of interspecies conflicts. In exchange, we ask only for cooperation and commitment to peaceful development. The words sounded reasonable, even generous, But everyone in the room understood the reality behind the polite language. The humans had just demonstrated overwhelming superiority over both military forces. This wasn't a negotiation. It was the establishment of a new order. Emperor Valorius leaned forward in his throne, his ancient eyes studying the human commander. "And what happens if we choose to refuse this generous offer?" Commander Lee's expression remained pleasant and unthreatening. "You're completely free to refuse, Your Majesty. However, we will maintain our protectorate over this region regardless of your decision. We've found through experience that most civilizations prefer to have input into their own governance rather than be protected involuntarily." The statement was delivered with perfect diplomatic courtesy, but its meaning was crystal clear. The humans would control this region of space whether the local powers cooperated or not. The only choice was whether to participate in the new arrangement or be sidelined by it. Supreme Commander Yextar's warrior pride finally boiled over. His species had built their entire culture around military strength and conquest. The idea of accepting protection from outsiders was almost unbearable. "What gives you the right to impose your will on sovereign civilizations?" he demanded, his voice filled with the rage of a defeated general. "By what authority do you claim dominion over our territories?" Kim Jae-wook, who had remained silent throughout most of the negotiations, spoke quietly from his position behind Commander Lee. His voice was soft, but every word carried the weight of absolute certainty. "The right of superior capability, responsibly exercised," he said simply. "We possess the power to destroy both your fleets completely. Instead, your crews are currently receiving medical treatment and technological upgrades to their life support systems. We could have conquered through force, but we prefer cooperation to conquest." Dr. Park So-young added with genuine enthusiasm that seemed almost out of place in the tense atmosphere. "The galaxy is vast and filled with incredible wonders. Humanity has so much to learn from both your civilizations. We're genuinely hoping this arrangement will prove mutually beneficial for everyone involved." Her excitement about the possibilities ahead seemed sincere, which somehow made the situation even more surreal. These humans had just casually dismantled the regional balance of power, yet they appeared genuinely excited about the opportunity to work with their new subjects. Emperor Valorius looked around the chamber at his most trusted advisors, at the defeated Keth delegation, and finally at the three humans who had fundamentally changed the political landscape of this entire sector in less than a week. The mathematics were simple and brutal. The humans possessed technology that made both empires obsolete. They had intelligence capabilities that rendered military secrecy meaningless. They could appear anywhere in Imperial or Keth space without detection and disable entire fleets without causing casualties. Most importantly, they had demonstrated remarkable restraint in how they use their overwhelming advantages. "Very well," Emperor Valorius said finally, each word carefully measured. "The Valorian Empire formally accepts protectorate status under Terran collective oversight." Supreme Commander Yextar followed reluctantly, his military training overriding his warrior pride. "The Keth Confederacy also accepts these terms." As the words were spoken, Emperor Valorius found himself contemplating an ironic possibility. His empire might have just been conquered by the most polite invaders in galactic history. These humans had achieved in days what would have required years of devastating warfare for any other species. More surprisingly, he was beginning to think this might not be entirely unfortunate for the region's future. If the humans truly intended to prevent conflicts and promote peaceful development, their overwhelming technological superiority might finally bring stability to a sector that had known nothing but constant warfare for centuries. Commander Lee Min-ho smiled warmly as the formal agreements were signed. "Welcome to the Terran Protectorate. We're looking forward to working together." The age of human expansion had begun, but not through conquest or destruction. Instead, it had started with calm competence, overwhelming capability, and an offer that was simply too reasonable to refuse. The galaxy would never be the same.